Alrighty, guys. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome back to another episode of the City Barbers podcast. To start, I want to set the table a little bit. You know, we talked about a statistic before. In the state of Utah, once you become a licensed professional, after 2 years, and that's our renewal time, by the 2-year mark, only 19% of licensed professionals renew their license. Think about it. When we get back, we're going to kind of talk about how do we make sure, whether it's our apprentice, whether it's a new barber here, or just a new person in the industry, when you're kind of within your first year or two of the industry, how do we make sure that that number goes up and gets higher, or at least how do we make sure that we are a part of that 19% that people stay in the industry? And Casey, hit that intro. Alrighty, guys. You know, all three of us have, surpassed the first 2 years of our industry. We've all renewed our license at this point. And kind of going back to that original question, you know, it was a state of Utah business license, kind of the professional license, only 19% getting renewed after that 2-year mark. I would imagine it's pretty similar in the whole nation and kind of every other state. And it's not just the barber industry, you know, it's cosmetology, it's esthetician, you know, it's a lot of that kind of service, professional, beauty world, if you will. Through you guys' experience, ultimately, you know, how do we make sure we're getting as many people to that 19%, or how do we raise that number? You know, ultimately, why is 19% such a real number? Why is it so low? And what can we do to actually better and improve that number?
I mean, I'd probably like to see the stats on like age groups too, because I feel like, I mean, when I was in school, there was a lot of people who were really young, straight out of high school, and just like needed something to do or didn't want to go to college, and I'd probably say those were the other.
Was that phase out of it?
Yeah, just because I feel like they just didn't really have like the heart for it or the drive for it, or they didn't really want it, and their parents told them like, oh, you should just go do that, so they would like have some sort of path to go on. I would like to kind of see how, like, what age groups that would be. But, I mean, that's pretty interesting. 19%.
Yeah, I could see. I mean, I always feel like with schools, they do a really good job at getting, I'm going to call that the middle of the pack type of, you know, students and clientele, the people that go into it. You know, because, you know, say you got a certain percentage of people that are going to go to, you know, college and higher education, and they have their mindset on, you know, a bachelor's, a master's degree, and they're kind of going that way. And then, you of course, have a lot of people that don't see the value there, it doesn't work for them, or they end up just, you know, kind of getting a job and kind of moving on through that whole situation while they discover themselves. And I feel like trade schools, but like the barber school specifically, they do a really good job at attaching themselves to the individuals that, well, they don't want to just get a job and kind of start going through the process of figuring themselves out in their life. Like, they want a career, they want something to attach themselves to. Yeah. And they see value in, you know, a little bit extra education after high school and everything there, but also don't see the value of going through 4 years, 8 years plus worth of school, and, you know, obviously the money that comes along with that. So I feel like it attaches on to a really core group of people that want to do more with themselves, want to be a part of a career, want to figure out like what resonates with them, but a little bit of an easier entry level than, you know, 4-year, 8-year degree type situation. So I think they do a really good job at attaching to as many people as possible. You know, we've all seen too, you know, a lot of schools, their whole MO is getting, you know, finances all figured out.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, whether it's through FAFSA, whether it's through VA loan situation, you know I was surprised at what percentage of people I went to school with that were getting this from like their VA loan situation, you know, started their life in the military, and they got out, figuring out what they want to do. You know, it might help a little bit with, you know, a master's degree, but not a lot. So they're like, all right, how can I almost get a degree for free through this? And as they should be taking advantage of it. But I was shocked how many people kind of came in through that way. And then, you know, especially going through FAFSA, you know, it's that $15,000 to $20,000 range where if you're everyday adult and you have no other student loans attached to your name, and you have done your own taxes and doing everything there, most people can get approved to some degree or most degree through FAFSA, through everything there to kind of get that loan process. So I always felt the school did such a good job at attaching to those type of people, whether you were really aware of what the industry looked like long term. Of course, passion's going to come with time anyways. That's on an individual level of figuring out. But I've always felt the school did a good job at finding as many people to get through the process, kind of sell them the dream, get the paperwork and the loans kind of processed there. And like once it's through and you get that check of approval and you started, I mean, you're obviously tied to it.
Yeah.
So most people commit through school, get it figured out, whether it takes them, the 6 to 9 months, or if it's like a year and a half, whatever they decide to do. So I think there's a balance of it. It attaches to a core group of people that maybe don't all know what they're getting themselves into in the long run. And I also feel once you do hit the industry, maybe expectations or understanding maybe how difficult it is to get a clientele, retain that clientele. At the end of the day, your first 2 years of being licensed, pretty obvious to think about it. It's probably going to be your slowest year or two. Nobody knows who you are. You have no clientele. You're starting from a school to go to a barber shop, if you will. We all know nobody follows you from school to the barber shop. It's a totally, you don't want that clientele. It's different. It's great practice. So thanks for schools for having that. But, you're starting at ground zero. What would you say to those barbers on their first year or two, once they've got licensed, to, I don't want to say manage expectations, but just to keep them focused, keep them aware, because there's going to be, we all see, there's going to be idle time. There's going to be downtime in your career, especially those first year or two. But it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
You got jokes going around all over social media right now where, barbers and other artists, January, the slow January, they're out front doing signs, trying to hustle people in. It's memes to joke fun at it, to poke fun at it. But it doesn't matter where you're at in the career. You're going to have the ebb and flow of the service industry. I mean, we're 7+ years deep, and we understand that there's ups and downs. There's heavy seasons. There's mild times. It comes with the territory. But if you're on your first year or two, those peaks and valleys are way bigger because you don't have that clientele. You're building that clientele. What would you share with kind of those individuals going through their first year or two? How do you give them that reality check, but also, keep them motivated and focused to kind of keep on going?
I would probably just say, I've said this before, just get ready to buckle in. It's going to be a rude awakening. And like you said, those slow times when you're first starting out are really suffocating at times. It messes with your confidence, whether you're cut out for this. And I think just being able to mentally be strong enough to get through those times, and also just don't be afraid to change things up. If you got to get a second job outside of work to get through the slow times, maybe that's something you should do. I know it doesn't sound glamorous, but you got to be able to adapt and overcome those circumstances. So if you're able to do that and just make it through, I think once you get through that first year, second year, I think it definitely opens up and brightens up, and hopefully if you're doing things right and building that clientele. But yeah, I just say buckle in, man. It's rough out there. Even if you're in a great shop, it's gonna be tough, especially when everybody else is busy and you're sitting back there folding towels and what do I need to do differently? And sometimes it's not even doing anything differently. It's just holding out, basically, I think.
I think he's big on, exactly to that point is, you got to have that eye on the big prize, the future. Yeah. You can't be living in this, monthly, kind of every 3 month kind of mindset. You got to have that big picture goal, why you got into this, what's everything really looking like in the future. How I kind of share it to that point, because I agree completely, is it's a process, and the processes take time, especially with clientele. It doesn't matter what type of shop you're in, what price point you're in, at what area you're in. You're going to get walk-ins, they're going to come in, you're going to get these people, but you got to execute on them. If you're not executing on them, they're not going to be coming back. And it takes time for people to come back. It's not one of these things where, I saw you yesterday, they're going to keep on coming in.
It could be 6 months.
For sure.
They could be a 2-time-a-year client, and you just got to keep having them come back, because you need a lot of guys in the barber industry. It's different than I think even being a cosmetologist. To fill out an 8-hour day for us, whether you're doing 30-minute cuts or you're doing hour-long cuts, you need 8 guys or 16 guys to stay busy and make money. And that's a lot of people.
I'd probably say my biggest advice to give someone when they're leaving school and then finding a shop to go to. I mean, I took it in a way where I was like, okay, I'm gonna find, like, I'm nobody. I need to find somebody who is somebody who I can mentor underneath, or they can be my mentor. So I went around to different places, kind of felt the vibe of the salon shop area, and just like found somebody who I connected with really well. I like went to different places to get my hair cut just to kind of feel it out, like did a little research on everyone, like where they went to school. And I think it's really important to make sure that you find a mentor where you are in your shop, and you have a person who, whether it's like the shop manager or someone who's like the lead barber at your shop, that they are well grounded and can help carry you, because it's hard. It's really hard to just kind of jump in and have those slow days, like, what can I do better? Or it's just like, I just have to wait till someone's in my chair so I can be better. I feel like making sure that you set yourself up in the right shop, salon, wherever you are, to make sure that they have, like, you know, good marketing, they do extra education. Like, those are huge things that you should look out for, because those first few years are going to set you up exponentially for later. As long as you just have like a guideline, someone who you can like talk to, like even if you're slow and you have a mentor, you can just like go out and hang out with them and ask them questions, or like do something for them to make their job easier, so that they're able to give you more time that you're asking for, as long as you have that agreement with them.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, gaining perspective, no matter how busy or slow or anything is, especially if you have that leader, that mentor you can be a part of. You can learn everything all day, every day.
Yeah.
Just how they carry themselves when they are busy, when they're not busy, how they're interacting with people, what are they doing with their downtime? I mean, what are they doing social media-wise? What are they doing, you know, following up on clients they've already had in past days? Like, there's so many things to this craft.
You could take their photos for them, then you could learn how to edit the photos, how they edit it, and then build their brand that way. And you can kind of take little keynotes for them. Those first fews are like, you should just be a sponge and being able to soak up everything and just have that energy, that drive to get there. And if you don't have that energy and that drive to just like fully immerse yourself in like new styles and what's going on in the shop, then you are going to be out of that 19% that keep renewing it if you don't have that drive, I feel like.
No, I agree. And that's exactly where I was going to lean into this too, is, so I always try to say, it's those first 3 to 5 years, you got to be just buckle down, think big picture, be that educational type sponge of just learning new information. You know, I was one where I would really say it was my first 5 years, it was just head down, keep on going up the hill, keep on working, keep on doing everything that I can with every client I had. Every spare time was all about education. Any downtime in the shop, it was all about kind of giving back to the shop and ultimately giving back to the craft, is how I always perceived it. You know, I find this way with any craft. It doesn't matter if it's a sport, a skill set like this, any other kind of trade or craft out there. To say turn that trade or that skill set into a craft, it takes time. And it's years worth of training and education and improvement. You know, it doesn't happen in the first couple months. It takes time to just snowball effect and keep getting more skill set and more and more and more. But I always kind of felt it was more, you're like giving your time into the craft to see if the craft really, jokingly, but like kind of sees it, if you deserve kind of what the benefits are going to come with it. It's like you got to kind of give first, and then the system and the craft itself just kind of keeps on giving back to you. But those first 3 years, and in my case, I really felt it was my first 5 years, it was like, what can I do to improve? I want to be better than I was yesterday. I want to be better than I was the month before, especially that first year or two. You know, you guys hear me say it all the time. I've said it too many times on the podcast, but, you know, there's 10 things to being a barber. Number 10 is cutting hair. There's 9 more important things to being a barber that's going to get you a clientele for life, to really keep you involved in this craft for forever. So those 1 through 9, definitely what I'm most passionate about. But that number 10, if you're not confident in that number 10 and you're not improving on that number 10, it takes all your focus for sure.
It makes it hard.
It for sure does.
Yeah.
And even if you're not really like conscious about it, like you might think you got a decent number 10 because you went to school, you did all this kind of stuff, but certain haircuts and hairstyles and time management, like these things are difficult if you're not high level of that level 10. But for me specifically, that first year, I'll just talk that first year, that number 10 technical side, I mean, I was so deeply consumed on just more education, more training. I mean, I got spoiled. You know, I came in, you know, City Barbers, like the best time I could have. It was a crap ton of education. Beyond lucky that I came in when I did. But my first year had like 12 different international educators come through here. The amount of just events and time and training, and you know, these educations too, it's not just, hey, you're in a barber shop with some mannequins with an instructor going over some stuff, or you're definitely not at a convention or a show where they're on the platform and you're just kind of watching from a distance. I mean, this is as one-on-one as they become. You know, it's somebody getting flown out here from a different country, doing multiple models where you're literally smelling their breath with how close you are, and you're asking questions, you're seeing everything they're doing as they're explaining it, saying, doing multiple haircuts. Then it's like, all right, now it's my time. Now I'm doing a haircut with that instructor holding my hand right behind me, you know, right over my shoulder, just watching everything, telling me everything that we need to improve on, how we need to grow on it. So I got spoiled, you know, having a dozen situations like that where it was just education, education, and education. So I definitely, that number 10, the technical side, not that it's easy, it's all, you got to put in the work to do it, but, you know, felt very confident, very fast before I was even licensed, especially once I became licensed and was able to really implement it every single day. Not everybody's going to have that opportunity. You know, most shops,
Very small amount.
not going to have that, right? But I still think that first year specifically, once you got out of school, education and training and learning still has to be your main focus.
Everyday practice.
It's so easy to think that, okay, I got licensed, like now it's off to the races. Like, I'm licensed, let's go. Basically, I'm on the field with the professional guys. Yes and no. Like, yes, you are, so you're going to get that practice and skill set, and, you know, you're obviously going to be able to make some money, where barber school, you're not making really any money at all. But it's really like, how can I improve? How can I get that training? How can I get that education? And I love, and I think there's nothing better than the mentor idea where it's in person, you know, that has a higher level of technical understanding, that can teach you these things, willing to take in the time, willing to explain everything that they're doing so you can really learn that. But also, dude, the amount of hair tutorials, the amount of online academies, the amount of, you know, which is great. You know, there's a lot of traveling artists out there. So there's so much education out there. But I really like to hone in on those people in their first years, like obsess about that.
Yeah.
Like, you need to obsess about as much technical education as you possibly can, because there's a lot of us that are. And there's a lot of us that are, you know, watching all these videos, doing everything to just learn every little nugget that you possibly can. And then you get the, you know, thousands of haircuts of life experience to refine it and really put it all into action. But I think a huge focus, which also fills up some idle time, which you're going to have in that first year, is these technical education and trainings. So that would be my biggest, like, first plea with people getting in. Like, once you become licensed, don't stop at barber school. I mean, start obsessing over the technical side, all of these different classes, all these courses, and damn, if you can get a real mentor in your shop or that you kind of lean into, what's better?
I mean, and that mentor just feels, you know, honored, you know, and so it's just like a really good balance of like having that communication, like, hey, I appreciate your work. Would you mind, you know, being my mentor? And then they take that responsibility on, which makes them an ultimately a better barber as well, which I think is really cool.
And you can have even multiple mentors too.
Of
For
course.
sure.
I mean,
Business.
I've learned so many different things from different people in this shop,
Mm-hmm.
and then even from people outside of the shop. Like, I was blessed to get some education from one of the best barbers in the world, and some of the best things I learned from him had nothing to do with even cutting hair. It was a simple thing of giving him a ride to where he was staying that night. It was a 5-minute car ride, but me and him just like talked about life for about 5-10 minutes, and those are some of the things that I'll take that really didn't have to do with cutting hair. Is more about just like sticking to it. Like, I think I can see that you're talented and you're cut out for this, so like just keep going. Something as simple as that can just keep you on that path and overcome like the hard times, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for all of us, but, you know, especially us that have been doing this for, you know, many years and, you know, are proud that we've gotten to where we're at in our industry, but the amount of impact that we can have, the amount of knowledge that we can share with somebody just starting out. We've obviously seen barbers, they get in, some people just soak that up, and you just know, okay, you're cut out for this. Like I can already tell you're going to make it. And then, there's some people where you're like, you're already kind of skating by and you're really not as obsessed or getting into the craft as much as, maybe I would recommend you doing.
Yeah.
People surprise us, people change, and people can last and everything. But I also think for all of us, there's recognizing the amount of impact that we can actually have on those younger people. Obviously, it's rewarding to know that your years of hard work can pay off, and people look up to that and want to learn from everything that you're doing, whether it's technically or those 9 other things. And I think it also, when you do start educating and you start teaching people, you really find out how much you know. And I always tell everybody is, if you can't explain what you're doing to, I'll say, as a 5th grader, if you guys listen to Pops' last podcast, it kind of talked about that same thing where you got to explain it as if you're telling it to a 5th grader. At the end of the day, somebody who's just starting out at school, they don't understand all the lingo, all the terminology, just all
or
the
even
context.
just how to hold a clipper.
So many
it's
things.
It's hard to teach somebody how to hold a clipper.
Yeah, and you've held
something
it
as small as that
tens of thousands of times. It's second nature of doing certain motions and, opening clipper, halfway close, like these little things that you're literally doing 1,000 times a day. They don't even know what this means.
Yeah.
Let alone if you're talking to a client. Of course they don't know what any of these things mean. But it's one where if you can't, in my opinion, if you can't explain what you're doing to somebody that knows nothing about what you're doing, I like to say you're not really aware of what you're doing. You need to be able to explain it. It's not just in your head. It's not just muscle memory because you're doing it. Like, you got to be explaining what you're doing, why you're doing it, and to be able to use it in terms that it makes sense to everybody. And then once they start understanding stuff, then you can get like simpler and more to the point and saying proper terms and, cutting out all the extra stuff. But if you can't explain what you're doing, I really feel, you're dropping the ball as an educator. It's you're not sharing the expertise level of what you're trying to do. Like, you have to put it in beginner mode and be able to explain it, and then work it up so it can keep on getting more technical and more refined. But you'd be surprised, when we call it the barber's eye. Think of the whole 10,000 hours kind of mindset, and it can be about anything that you do. Once you start doing, 10,000 plus hours at anything, you read between the lines. You see things that you never saw at the beginning. And, cutting hair is the exact same way. Looking at a haircut today versus when you first started school.
Like we did the other day.
Oh, my goodness, man.
It's mind-blowing.
Oh, you look at your barber school haircuts.
It's so humbling, too. You're like, damn, that was bad. But then you're like, actually, look where I've been. Look where I am.
And
It's
it helps
pretty
those
cool.
people who are learning when they might be frustrated with, like, their haircut. And you're
Like, why doesn't it look like yours?
like, literally,
Or,
like, I
yeah.
showed him my first haircut, and I'm like, look, like, this is where I came from. So just, it's going to
We'll
be
get
okay.
there.
Yeah.
And I like that too and I really try, if I'm ever having a mellow day or if I'm having like certain things that I can resonate with a first-year barber or, first 2-year barber, I really try to be like, hey, I'm 7 years deeper into this and I'm having a day like this, or I'm having a haircut like this, or I'm
I've heard
having a
you say
moment
that
like
a
this.
couple times before, yeah. So.
And it's just one of those where trying to let people know, one, it's okay to feel the way that you're feeling. It's one, we've all been there. Every single barber that's been doing this for years and years and years, we've all been in your shoes. That's kind of the great part of this craft, or any really craft out there. Everybody that's ahead of you that feels like it's just insurmountable, like I can't wait till I can get there, or like any thought, we've all been where the beginner's been at. So there's no shortcuts. Like the gym, there's no cheat in the gym. If you go to the gym every single day, but you're not lifting weights or you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, your body doesn't look good just because you showed up to the gym. You have to put it in the reps. You have to be putting in the time, and, barbering is the exact same way. So for everybody, newer, beginning, school, first year or two, always remind yourself, every person you look up to, every person that you admire, every person that influences you, they've all been in your shoes. They've all been exactly where you've been at. They persevered through that. And just because they persevered through it, it shows that you can do it too. It's been done. This isn't something new that never been done before. Like, you can do it as well. And I do think having that just humbling feeling of, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm at step one. There's no way around it. It is what it is. Only thing I can do is to improve to get to step two and then improve to get to step three. It is the process of it all. But taking the time to find people, no matter in your shop, in the industry, in other industries. And I'm with you. I love the 1 through 9. I love conversations, and I'm the same way. Every educator I've had, every person that's really inspired me, I'm appreciative of how number 10, the technical knowledge that I have. But when I talk to a person, and it gets deep, it gets real, it's about real life, it's about connecting with human beings, it's about bettering yourself. That's the shit that gets me going. You know, I've always been like, I love, you get me in a car ride, dude, I don't need music. Like, if we can talk the entire time. I mean, honestly, even just as little stuff of us coming in to like do the podcast type situation, it's mostly we're just chilling and talking.
Yeah.
I love that. I was made for this industry, just one-on-one, deep interaction, conversation. Like, I'm cool with groups. Like, I can totally, deal with everybody, be a part of it. I'm definitely not an attention seeking, like, I'm loud, look at me, like, I want to be a center of attention. Those are the moments I'm like, all right, I'm going to recluse and just kind of observe and watch. But you get me on a one-on-one, that's what I love. Because we can actually, help each other out. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. Like, you're going to help me out just by little words that you say, little perspectives that you have, let alone if you're talking to somebody that you look up to, especially in the same industry, or that you can pull nuggets from. And they share these like deep, more personal experiences or just thoughts. And you're just like, fuck yeah, like that inspires me to be better.
Yeah, I just have a little story to tell. When Gio was here, we watched him do haircut after haircut, model after model. And usually when a model is getting cut, they're not talking. No one's talking to them. They're not the focus of what's going on.
The client in the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're getting a free haircut usually. So it's all about whoever's instructing is teaching, like the barbers watching. And where I was most inspired by Gio when he came is he did a haircut and he told us, he's like, all right, guys, like, don't ask me questions. Like, I'm not going to answer your questions. Like, I'm just going to cut this guy's hair. And I just want you guys to watch. And he had, as if he was in a shop, just a normal, like, haircut process. And he just talked to this dude. They had some, like, deep conversations about life. And, like, you got to kind of see things from Gio that way. And it was just, like, I was just so inspired. I'm just like, this guy's one of the best barbers I've ever seen or in the world. And just getting to see him actually, like, in the moment, like, do what he does best was just like, I was just so inspired by that. And even if I didn't learn anything about haircutting, I definitely did, but just that interaction there was just so cool to me.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Same thing. I mean, I've been lucky to have that same exact feeling. I was probably right there next to you when that was all happening. And it's one of those where, again, it's the 1 through 9. That's the shit that really just resonates and influences you and just gets you inspired to kind of do it. And I would argue, I mean, that's really what this craft is all about. That's really what being a barber is all about. Obviously, they're here for the haircut, they're here for the grooming, they're here for the technical side. And yeah, I always say it's the tool to get you to the real prize. And the real prize is the human connection, the rapport, the moment in time, that experience with another individual. I mean, there's so much evidence that clearly we're social beings. We need to be connected to people. But it's deep. It's real. It's like a real in the moment. There's no surface level. It's not a bullshit conversation. It's impactful. And for us, being kind of more students of the craft, when you see that and you focus on that, it's just like, hell yeah, like that's what being a barber.
Like, that's the goal.
Yeah. That's really what it is.
Even though it's an amazing haircut, like, that wasn't the best part of that, like, sequence, basically.
There's been, I've heard it, on other reels and podcast clips and stuff like that, where to really impact a person at the end of the day and what they remember, a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever, they're going to appreciate the haircut. What they really remember and hold on to, it's how you made them feel. It's the actual feeling that they've had that they look forward to again. Hell yeah, having a great haircut is awesome, especially when you find out I always just say, average Joe doesn't know the difference between a good haircut and a great haircut until they get a great haircut and they realize those good haircuts were never good haircuts. You only know what you know, and that's fair. But once you get that great haircut, you're like, hell yeah, I can't wait, grows out better, blah, blah, blah. But if it's been months and years before you're like, I'm able to come back, I can't tell you how many of my clients move away, life happens and they go some, they're out living life differently, not in Utah anymore. And when they come back, I've had 3 years, 4 years go by, and it's like, I've been counting down the days until I can come back here. And don't get me wrong, they want the quality grooming, that definitely helps. But it's ultimately, how they feel when they're in the chair, how they're feeling leaving the chair. It's that feeling and confidence and just emotional support and a good experience in the moment. Like, that's what resonates with them. That's what they remember for a lifetime. The amount of guys that sit in your chair that sat with barber after barber after barber, or hairstylist after hairstylist, and they're going to keep doing that because they travel, they move, all these things, life keeps on happening.
Yep.
But those people that they really connected with on a personal level, those are the ones that those memories stay. Those are the ones. And we're spoiled to have a service that really cultivates that experience. Obviously, we're the exact opposite of the a la carte quantity type haircut. So that time and how we operate and how our culture is, we put so much emphasis on the quality rapport, the relationship, the conversation, the experience. So even if you're not being very prideful in that kind of work, our service kind of creates that experience anyways. But then you toss in somebody that is passionate about connecting, is passionate about like actually giving to another human being and servicing them and influencing them for the better and using them to influence us to the better. It's you can't replace that. Like, it is such a meaningful experience for all of us.
And I feel like also that conversation and that time you take with that person will come naturally throughout your career, just because you'll get more comfortable being behind the chair, you'll be more comfortable in your consultations, you're more comfortable in greeting the person and closing with the person, giving them that feeling to come out. And to that point, I feel like the first, like you said, 3 years, it's very important to hone in on your skill, because everything else will come with time. You'll be like, okay, well, I've done this haircut before. This is going to be easy, clipper over comb. And then you're able to kind of have that conversation with that person where when you're new, you're like, okay, well, what's my first step? And you're in your mind. I mean,
you're stressed about the technical side, so you almost can't focus on the 1 through 9.
So you have to like give yourself some grace in that area, and also communicate with your client. Like, hey, when I first started, my the owner of the shop I was at told me never tell anybody you're brand new, because that's just instantly triggering for them. Like,
for sure.
I always round it up. I'm like, I've been doing this a year.
She says round up to 2 to 3 years. Just say that. How long you been? Oh, she's like, count school as a year. Just do whatever. Just because it gives them confidence and calm, and also yourself. I mean, yes, it's a little white lie, but in the grand scheme of things, it's like cheat when necessary is basically what she said. But I feel like just tell them like, hey, I'm a little bit more quiet when I get my haircuts going, just because I haven't had you in my chair before. Just to be a little bit more communicative with them. If you feel like I'm in over my head, oh my God, what am I gonna do with this?
I always tell them that I get lost in the sauce sometimes.
Yeah, see, good, yeah.
And they laugh, and it's just like, sorry, sometimes I just overly focus and I get
you're
lost
so
in the
focused.
sauce. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like those first 1 to 3 years is a lot more technical, and then those 1 through 9 will come really just kind of easy. If you're in the right shop, you're in the right environment, you're feeling, that your business is growing. Those 1 to 3 years are a lot more technical based with all your education you've been through, and you as well. I feel like that's the biggest key to those first 3 years.
Yeah, it doesn't stop at school. That's preseason. That's the very beginning, honestly.
Basics. Like when I was in school, I was hungry. I was like, can I get more? Can I get more? And they literally told me like, no, your 20 grand is only for the basics and to pass the test. And I was mad. I was like really mad actually. And I just was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go find it somewhere else then. As soon as I was like out of school, I was at a shop.
That's what I did. I found this place before. I was 4 weeks into school. I found another avenue to learn, and it's crazy what you can learn in like a real life shop.
Yeah.
I think another thing too, especially that first year, when you are slow, and you and me, Ace, have had a conversation about this before. There's gonna be days where you go 7 hours without doing anything, and it's hard. It's frustrating, and you get to walk in that last hour and you've just sat there all day and you're frustrated. You can't let that person know, or your energy can't be off. Like, you gotta
that person's never
you
gonna
gotta
come back.
wipe that face off and then
shake it out.
treat that person like you've been cutting hair all day, you've been busy, and you're in a good mood. Even if they be like, oh, have you been busy today? Like, oh yeah, it's been a great day. Even if you've been folding towels all day.
White lies.
Yeah, like you got to be able to really not two-face it, but you got to be able to
show up.
Yeah, show up and give them that service no matter how frustrated you are with the day. Because I mean, other barbers will feel it, the client will feel it. If your vibe is off, your energy is off, and like you might be frustrated to cut that person's hair, you just can't do it. Like you got to be able to switch it up and adapt. And
Oh yeah.
And if you know it's going to be a slow day, always have a mannequin and a stand in your car. You can practice whatever. You can, bounce off other people who might have 30 minutes. Be like, hey, pick a haircut for me to do so I can do it.
Yeah.
Just like make sure that you're being present daily and cutting hair daily, whether it's on a mannequin or,
just watching
another
videos
barber.
in the
Yeah,
back.
do a hair tutorial
do a
with your
tutorial.
mannequin.
Yeah.
You always see us doing that in the back. If like there's nothing left to do kind of in the shop, like we're watching hair tutorials and little things. Like there's a haircut you're not completely confident in. Watch 3 different videos on it. Like you might gain something, you might not, but
Have your business cards ready, go for a walk around the neighborhood, go pass them out, I mean, I feel like if you're in a city, they're like booming everywhere right now. So like go pass it out, go drop them off to every single apartment door, take those flights of stairs, just get it done.
Yeah.
Drop
just
them off at
be seen in the shop.
restaurants, yeah.
Get out there, greet
Don't sit
the
in
other
the
guys'
back.
clients. Like
As they say, dreams die in the back.
I mean, I've gotten
sure.
clients from you guys that I've been able to cut because you guys might be busy, booked out, whatever, and like guys will know who I am and they'll book with me because they feel comfortable because they just know my face.
Oh, huge. I'm a big believer. I mean, I love to do the tutorials, do the hair cutting stuff, kind of get that going. I really feel kind of giving to the craft is a real thing. And it's one when, the joke is, idle time is the devil's playground. There's going to be idle time in the barber industry. That is how that shit works. But what you do with that idle time is everything. And I, big believer, give it to the craft. And it's as annoying and as simple and as not important as you may think it is, get yourself seen out front. Get a broom, sweep up the dust, sweep up the leaves. I always say,
Time to lean, time to clean.
it's one of those almost Japanese type respect culture things. We all hear about, how respectful and how dialed in every, just like the pride that people have in Japan for like their craft and their skill set.
Right, like tradition of things.
Everything. It doesn't matter what job you are, what skill set you're in, and they understand it's it's putting in that time and that effort. But you're going to see if you ever go to Japan, never been, but with all the clients that you talk to, it's just like you see, the 70-year-old lady that runs the store or runs that thing. They're out sweeping the sidewalk. Sure, if it's dirty, you're cleaning up your area, but what you're doing is you're hitting all the details, a part of your environment, a part of your craft. Your craft is that whole environment. It's not just cutting hair. It's not just behind the barber chair. This whole area, this is ours. You're sweeping out there. It's showing. You care so much about the community that you're making sure everything that you can do is going to be clean. It's going to be dialed in. All the trash is picked up. All the leaves are kind of swept up. The dust is swept up. It's the cleanest area of the block. People notice that as they're walking, let alone you're outside. So every person that walks by, whether they're walking to work or just kind of chilling out in the city, you're giving them good energy. You're asking them how they're doing. You give them a smile. It's not about always getting the clientele, but it's really just being proud and having that pride in your craft. Like I'm a barber, and like this is our area. Like you're gonna know that the barber shop is here. This is a good energy, a good space. That's everything's thought about, including outside, in front of it all. So I'm a big believer of kind of giving your time to the craft itself. Making sure the shop is dialed in. Yep. We all, with how much talc powder every barber uses. You go an hour without dusting something, it looks like it's sat there for 6 months of dust. And we obviously know it's just talc powder from what we're using there. We got blow dryers blowing everything around, AC and heaters going on. But a client doesn't know that. Yeah. A client's going to see the couch and be like, oh man, there's fucking dust all over this, even though you might have swept it 4 hours ago, or you might have done it. But if you don't do it daily, if you don't do it multiple times a day, it really shows how unkept and unclean. One of the big things that I always get, if I have a client that's pretty used to how we operate, how we do everything here, how I do everything, if they go whether they bring their son to a different barber shop, or they're traveling, or they're doing maybe their business is doing something in another barber shop. So often I get, man, dude, it's so dirty. It's crazy, like the hair, sure, but like the dust, just their situation with their tools, of how unkept it is. Clients notice these things, especially if they're coming from a place where they've seen quality, they've seen that better version, and then they start seeing, not as high quality businesses. Those things stand out. So, taking pride in the actual shop itself, your home, it's you treat it like your home. Make sure it's tidied up, make sure it's clean, make sure everything's straightened. It's just every little thing can be just tweaked a little bit better. The details with it all. And then remind me what you said. I had a really good thought about it that I wanted to plug into it all.
About
it was the last thing you said.
Having like a good attitude. When,
exactly.
Say you sit there for 7 hours, guy walks in the last hour, and you're like, I just want to go home.
Exactly.
You gotta change that face up, and
if you leave early, you want to have them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard to make money when you leave early.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you for that, for reminding me. So how I always view it is a few things. You got to have that etch-a-sketch type mentality. Whether it's personal life, whatever you're going through, the moment you walk into these doors, you got to put it on by the wayside. It's not the time and place to put your negative emotions and life things going on other people. To be a human being, if you got to take care of personal things, that's a different conversation, but we're here to service people. We're in the service industry, and the easier and faster you can put your problems aside and not put that on your clients, that doesn't help you. It really doesn't help you.
Energy is huge, and we're in a small space.
Huge.
If you're 5 chairs down and I can feel your energy, that's a problem.
Let alone with the clients feeling, dude, you're touching them. You're with their head. Like that energy is absolutely real. So we all understand that. How I was always taught, and this is a little bit from childhood, but it's definitely like once I started here. Again, they say these white lies or these little things. I always say it is like, what are you putting stock into? If you have that 0 for 7 hour, and then you come on a walk-in here, if you're putting stock into that first 7 hours of how miserable it was, if you weren't cutting, you weren't making money, you weren't doing these things, my first question is, well, what were you doing to actually help yourself in that situation? Question 1. But the next step is, if that's what you're putting stock into, then when you get to that 8th hour, when you actually have a client, your energy, your attitude, your stock that your mindset is on is now, it's miserable because you're on that 0 for 7 situation. I was always taught, you got to think about everything's great. Whatever question they ask you, and they ask you a personal thing, everything's great. And it's one of those where it's almost, you're not convincing yourself that like this is where you're trying to go. It's that, a little bit of that like you're emulating and you're kind of manifesting what you want kind of going there. But I'm a big believer mindset's everything. So if anybody asks you, how's your day going? How your day has been? How are you feeling? How's your life going? Even if you were 0 for 7, it's like, great, dude, always busy. Just like everything's great, everything's busy, everything's awesome, everything's improving, everything's growing. They don't need to know that you just sat there for 0 for 7. That doesn't look good for you. That doesn't make them feel good. But telling them like, yeah, dude, great day, busy day in the shop. Been busy doing this, been busy doing that. You don't have to be like, oh, dude, been sitting here since 8 a.m. Yeah. Haven't been doing anything, just been waiting for, a client.
Because then they'll think like, oh, why is he sitting here
for
since 8
sure.
a.m.?
There's so many thoughts that are going to go through the head, and none of them are good.
Yeah.
So it's one of those of, you're trying to create this you're trying to manifest this great future in this career. Act like it today. That's basically you're telling yourself life is good. Life is great. The day was great. All my clients have been great. Everything's awesome. We're busy. All it does is make them feel better. If a client's coming in for the first time and they see people kind of, in the chairs, you got good energy, everything's great and positive and awesome. You're talking about how awesome your day's been, how lucky you are to be a barber. It makes them feel awesome. Mm-hmm. It's that type of energy that really translates to them. But at the end of the day, the more you do that, the more you keep it going. It just becomes who you are. And then that's the world that you've created. But you have to start there. You don't piss and moan about having, reality hit you in the face that you're not busy and you're not killing it. And then when time enough happens, you really think you're going to have that attitude of appreciation and greatness? Like, you got to start there.
Well, it like almost graduates to like, okay, you're not busy, and then you do a haircut and you're super frustrated. Say it comes to a day where you are busy and you're 15 minutes behind on every client. I personally have experience with this.
Yeah.
Not letting that compound into you acting differently, being frustrated, and letting the client kind of feel your energy, just like, oh, this person feels rushed. Like, say you are back to back to back and you are late, like you still got to keep that energy up, keep that vibe up, because they'll start to feel it too.
100%. How I like to explain it too is, say you're my client, you're sitting in the chair. I'm at level 90 energy, positive, good. We're rumbling. We're kind of going, right? You come in at level 30. Bad day, whatever could be there. There's 2 ways that are going to go. 3 ways. 3 ways are going to come. I'm 90. You're down at 30. Either you're going to come up to my 90 or I'm going to come down to your 30. We might meet a little bit in the middle if we can kind of give or take or anything there. But how I operate is like, all right, I'm giving you that level 90, that level 100%. I'm going to do whatever I can to get your energy up as much as possible. And, there's real life situations where like, all right, we got to be a little bit downer today because we're going through some shit.
Yeah.
And like, let me live there with you. But at the end of the day, that whole, misery loves company kind of mindset, if you got somebody with low energy, you drag people down.
Yeah.
It's harder to climb that hill, of course, right? But what if you're the barber at that 30, 40%? You're getting somebody that comes in a good day, they're positive, life's going really good. Dude, you're either going to bring them down with you and it's going to be miserable, or they're going to feel that 40 and that 30. And I'm like, I'm not sitting with that person again.
And it's not their job to bring you up.
No, it's yours. If we're going to assign an assignment anywhere, it's definitely your job to bring them up. We have a great space to lift people up, to make them confident, to have a positive moment in time. If they are going through some real shit outside, whether it's work, personal life, life's complicated. If they're going through some stuff, this is our opportunity to give them like a break from that. This is their time to like just chill out. They're taking care of themselves. They can forget about real life for a moment.
Yeah.
That's the powerful thing about, being focused in the moment and being present in like an experience and a relationship like this. We have that opportunity. So if you're the barber and you have that 30% energy, good luck. It is just, nobody wants to sit with that. Nobody wants to be around a Debbie Downer. Nobody wants to be around somebody that has a piss poor attitude. They're not going to do it, especially if they're paying you money. Nobody's going to pay you money to be around somebody that is just miserable to be around. So it's like, don't fake it till you make it. Like, you got to really believe in yourself that, you are operating at the 90%, that you really have that good energy, but like, you got to be it. It's definitely our responsibility to have that consistent, positive energy. Not always the easiest, but it's one where it's like, again, easier said than done, but a good strategy that I've always had is that 40% energy. If that's what your real life is at right now, the moment you walk through that door, boom, it stays outside. Like, it doesn't come within the walls of the barber shop. It doesn't, because you're going to start putting that on your clients, and that's not good for you. That's not good for them. It's not good for your career. So it gets checked at the door. And then, really convince yourself that, life is good. Life is good. Like, I know we all go through some shit, and like, life gets hard, and there's complications of it, and there's great days, and there's some not so great days. Things happen. Yeah. But if you're consistently putting in that effort of like being positive and doing everything you can, and you're actually putting in physical work to achieve that, and you're doing that day in and day out, one, that really impacts your clients on a positive way, which only is going to help you out in the long run. But it really does, just, it keeps you going. It keeps you moving. It keeps you there. You're not just at home being sad or miserable because your life sucks. That's good luck getting out of that hole. That is way hard. Yeah. You have a chance to leave that outside, come into a space where you are positive, where you are good. And worst case scenario, it's a break from a miserable life. If that's really how life is hitting you right now, it's a break, which is good. It's good to have that break. But the more you kind of live in this environment and space, your life's going to get better. You're going to have that more consistent positive energy.
Well, and circling back to making sure you find a place where you're motivated, the people around you are going to bring you up to that point. Like, starting off your life is maybe at a 40, you're like, I'm not busy, I'm not making money, I'm not cutting hair. But at least if you come into a shop where you feel like you can actually leave that and have that support is super important. I think
that feeling, or,
like we say good morning to each other when we walk in. Like we talked about that yesterday. Like that's very important to feel seen, to
just
feel
to
recognized.
Have a crew that if you are having that bad day, and you come in and like the people you're around and you work with can bring up your vibe, like that's just a blessing.
Yeah.
Because it's not always that way. People have jobs where they hate the people they work with. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you feel it. And you know, when there's a barber in your area or in your shop that's having a rough day, like we all feel it. Which it really, let
What's
alone
up,
their
man?
clients are
Yeah.
feeling it. We're feeling it. We're with them for 9 hours. So it goes a long way of finding the environment that is positive and uplifting. Most of the time, you know, that's the goal of everything. You know, I always do this whenever it happened, you know, real recently, whenever a barber student or a new person, they come looking in like, hey, I want to, you know, I'm checking you guys out, kind of seeing, you know, if this is, you know, I don't know, saw you guys online. I want to ultimately maybe get a job here eventually. Two things I love doing. I tell them straight up of just like expectations, reality is, hey, this is the hardest barbershop to work in. And what I mean by that is I'm going to ask more out of you. I'm going to keep you motivated. I'm going to keep you working. I'm going to keep you doing stuff. I have higher expectations. To be the bar, you have to act like the bar. So it's very much like a reality of like, hey, this is who we are, and this is definitely the expectations that are going to be here. But at the same time, you're going to have a whole environment and a culture and a team that's doing that with you, that's doing whatever they can to bring you up that hill, to move you along with it. If you really want that growth mentality, that doing whatever I can to keep on improving, and you are okay with accountability, this is the greatest place you can ever be. There's not a single barbershop or an environment that's going to hold you to that standard, but do it with you and have people around you that are doing the exact same thing. But it's real. You can't fake it here. You know, it's like if you're going to if you really don't want that, this is definitely not the place for you. So like that reality is real. But if you do want that, this is going to be the most understanding, cooperating, positive, team building. We want to see you win. We're going to do everything there. I tell everybody, go to every barbershop you possibly can. Judge them. How do they treat you? How do they make you feel? How do they talk to you? Those kind of things, how they treat you is how they're going to treat your clients. If you go in there and they're not that they're, you know, bending over backwards and taking away from, you know, a paying customer to, you know, really, you know, make you feel uberly welcomed, but, you know, the people that aren't busy or just how they interact with you, you know, how welcoming are they? What's their energy like? How do they make you feel when they're talking to you? Those things go a long way. You do need to be in an environment that you feel comfortable in, that brings the best out of you. Not everybody's supposed to be in an environment like this. Not everybody's supposed to be in an environment like the Yankees or any sport. Like there's going to be a different culture everywhere. So you need to know, like, how does it make me feel? And there's no way of knowing that if you're just chilling at barber school, just waiting until you get your license before you try to find a job. You know, big recommendation. I don't care if it's first week in barber school, if you're 90 days, if you're at the very end of it all, go visit barbershops. You don't need to DM them or call them real fast. Like, hey, can I come in? Just walk in.
FaceTime.
Just
Schedule a haircut.
Show
For
up.
sure.
That's
That's
what I
huge
did.
to see.
I
That's
got a
really cool to
haircut
see.
here, and
Yeah.
I didn't go to a lot of other shops. I should have. I saw this shop, chose this shop. So from my experience, I'd say go to another shop.
Yeah.
Then it would have made sense in my mind. Like, okay, like this is
It'll
very
solidify.
much so different. Mm-hmm. So I had been in other barbershops in the past. I got my haircut there, but in the moment where I was like maybe shopping for a place to work, I should have gone to other places because I came here first, and then I'm like, yes, this is where I want to be. Like, ended up working out throughout a journey, but we're here. It's great, but I'd say definitely go look at other places.
Yeah, look at all of them. All the ones in your area.
Yeah.
You know, a week or two ago, you know, any new person that comes in here, if I'm talking to them, I will absolutely tell them that is little homework. Like, just go put yourself out in every other barbershop that you have a slightest interest in. Go talk to them. Go there. See how they make you feel. See what's a possibility.
Maybe even go in and talk to them and don't tell them you're a student. Like I said, like just that's probably easier by just scheduling a haircut.
Yeah.
But like, I like to think like, how would they treat your mom if she walked in the door? And if it's a good thing, then like, yeah, maybe that's somewhere I want to be.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
I kind of want to shift to retention. That's probably like your biggest feat in the first year or two, is like making sure people come back. And one of the things that I learned was that could be helpful to hopefully other people is don't overpromise, underpromise, because you want to have an expectation for yourself, but you want to have a more real expectation of where I'm at skill wise, personal life wise, maybe communicating with your client wise. So just kind of just like, if they have a haircut they want to get, just kind of like under promise them a little bit, be like, yeah, we can do this and that. And then once you get the haircut done, it will be better than they expected, and it will give them the opportunity to want to come back. And I think that's been super helpful.
A little under promise and overperform.
Yes, thank you. That's what I was trying to get to. But yeah, I think under promising and overperforming is a huge thing in your first year or two, because I mean, you're a little baby in this barber world, and you know this much out of this whole thing to be cutting hair, and it's a lot. It feels like there's a lot on your shoulders to be like the person next to you that's cutting hair. And I think if you give yourself the opportunity to breathe a little bit and not feel so stressed and so worried, and you just make sure that you're giving your best, like looking back at those haircuts in the beginning, like we gave our best at those. And if you stop giving your best and you stop making sure that you are present every day, that's when you fall off.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you're giving your best, and it might not be the person next to you best or the person in your chair's best haircut they've ever had, but if you truly feel like you gave your best, that will be rewarded.
I mean, you can only do what you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to realize, that's all you can do in this world is do the best version of yourself.
Yeah, be like, hey, I think like communication, always everything's important. So if you just kind of communicate to them, like, hey, I can't really do that, or not I can't do that. Like, hey, I'm going to shift this a little bit, and not maybe say like you're not comfortable doing that, but maybe opening a door of saying like, what do you think about this instead? And they're usually on board, they're like, that's fine. And then it will give you a chance to kind of like hone your skills in a little bit more. I don't know. I feel like under promising and overperforming is a huge key to that.
Well, what always made sense to me is I always grew up with that mentality that actions speak louder than words. And, hopefully, you're never going to hear me say, yep, I'm going to give you the best haircut you've ever had, or I'm the best barber in the state, anything there. Like, I'm not going to say that to the person in the chair. What I am going to do is show you everything that I possibly can do. And, it started with, it was a lot of education. It was a lot about explaining the shape of the haircut, of what I'm giving them, why I'm giving it to them, understanding their growth pattern, understanding their head shape. So education was a big deal. Still is, and I do it with every person still, but the first little bit, like that was my steady Eddie. Every person sitting in my chair, I was able to connect and kind of teach them through that. And it was really through my actions. I was showing them what I was doing it. I was explaining why I was doing it so it made sense to them. But it wasn't like I wasn't going to start out that haircut, be like, oh, I'm going to give you the best shaped haircut you've ever had. It's just going to grow out better than you've ever had.
Yeah, if you've never had them, you don't know their head shape, their bumps, their lumps, their calyx. Like,
and you're not trying to sell them.
Yeah,
like it's one of those where, at the end of the day, obviously, if you're in the people business, you're selling. It's just you gotta, for sure. But it's like you're not trying to come across in that verbal used car salesman and basically I'm gonna like word manipulate you into thinking how I want you to think. I'm gonna show you. I'm always been kind of an action speak louder than words kind of guy. So it was all about the service. It was always about what I could show them. And a lot of it's communication. I'm a huge believer in communication. I literally have the definition of a dad that just grilled communication down your throat, and not everybody had that. So I'm lucky to have my whole life kind of focused around that. But it was all about showing. It was all about action. It was all about performing what I was doing to that level and then explaining it along the way. But I let the actual act of what I was doing, how it made them feel, what I was focusing on, like that's how I resonated with my clients, and still to this day. And I think that's how you do retain those customers and those clients. You selling them the dream with your words. Again, you're trying to oversell, and if you don't perform to that level, they're not coming back. It's in communication. How I was kind of always taught it is there's 3 things to communication, and all 3 of them have to be like aligned with one another. If one of these are not in line with another, the person feels like you're lying to them. And it was the words that you say, the tone of voice that you're using, and kind of like the volume and the intentions kind of behind it all. If all 3 of those things line up with one another, even if you're telling a lie, it feels like you're being truthful. It feels like everything's aligned. But if you have one person that like the tone is incorrect or the volume's incorrect or the words that they're saying and just something just doesn't line up, it comes across of like, man, I feel like this person's lying to me, like selling me. So I was always big of like your actions, your words, your tone of voice. It all has to line up with one another. So it's just, all right, everything that I do, say, and the tone of how I say it is going to be aligned with one another. And that's, I think, how you just become across truthful, how you become honest, and you put the emphasis on the action of being a barber. And I'm just a big believer that's what life is. Life, it's really, it's the actions that you do. It's what you're really creating. It's what you're really giving. It's what you're really, doing is what matters.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty lucky here too, with just the experience that we've created, that it's kind of easy to do that sometimes. It's just like, obviously you want to give them a good haircut, but it's pretty easy to kind of rely on just the experience because it's kind of set in stone with what we do.
Yeah.
That you can say like, oh yeah, like we want to give you a good haircut, but it's really about the experience here. Like we want you to be pampered. We want you to leave feeling good, and kind of just say that nonchalantly sometimes, just like, yeah, we want to give you a good haircut. But then they get all these other experiences, things, and like really not sell the experience, but like, what am I trying to say here? Basically, like, rely on the other things you're doing during the haircut, and they get those good feelings, and they're like, wow, this is crazy. I've never had this before. And then you show them the haircut in the mirror, and it's like the best haircut they've ever had.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
everything's just
explosion.
like their mind's blown.
Because you're like, yeah, I'm going to give you a good haircut. Like, but you're just kind of like, yeah. But then like, oh yeah, I'm going to give you a back massage. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. Like hot towel. And they're just like, wow, this is crazy. And then you show them that really good haircut. Then they're just like, wow, this is crazy.
It's really our system and our service that we have is so dialed in on kind of that 1 through 9. So like how they're going to feel, as long as you didn't ruin their hair, they're going to leave here feeling great, feeling wonderful, especially if they've never had anything close to this, which most people have never experienced that real full service time in and time out. So it's like our system and our service just kind of does that naturally.
It's like 60 to 70% of the whole thing.
And you can do that higher quality. You can make that even better there. And then, when you do that, number 10 is still great quality, especially, the greatest they've ever had. Dude, it's that cherry on top that just the bow on the wrapping paper that just seals the deal, that you're just like,
you've been having a great conversation. They're not even thinking about the haircut. And then you're just like, all right, bro, I'm going to show you a little 360 real here. Boom. And they're like, holy crap. Like, what just happened? It's just, that person's probably going to come back.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I guess to wrap it up, to kind of tie it all up in the bun, if you're on the first 2 years, we want you to be that 19%, and ultimately we want that number to get higher. We believe that, this is arguably one of the greatest careers, crafts to be a part of, how you connect with the community, how you improve yourself and improve the people around you. We want to raise up that number. We want more people to, stay into the industry. Maybe at first it's a little bit of understanding the reality of what you're getting yourself into is, a big first step. It's part of it. Yeah. But then everything after that is really think big picture. You're buckling in for the long haul. This isn't the fast career to great success and a perfect life. You got to create it, you got to build it, but ultimately, big picture. You got to be thinking years down the road, and have your mindset focused there. And then along the way, that snowball effect of, getting more education, really be that sponge, be the technical education sponge, and get it from as many avenues as you possibly can. Definitely the more in-person, face-to-face mentors, educators, those type of experiences, they're second to none. So really try to get as much of that as possible. And we recommend, finding that shop where you can have that in-house as much as you can. Great way to improve and succeed. But, ultimately, think big picture and, get ready to put in the work, because if you don't put in the work, there's no way to be a part of that 19%.
You signed up for it. You
Live in it.
Commit to it. Yeah. And people, honestly, in my first year, I had a great great experiences of people being a lot more understanding and a lot nicer than you think they are. Like, you can't let the fear of you messing someone's hair up, you know, like hold you back. You can't be focused on perfection. Those people are going to follow you. They're going to be there with your journey. And those are the ones that are the most impactful. And you're going to be surprised that most people are very understanding and want to be there for you.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Especially if you're connecting with them on that personal level and that 1 through 9 of how they're feeling. They're probably unaware that that number 10 is going to improve over time.
Yeah.
It's really, you know, if you make them feel good, they'll stay with you.
Yep.
So just really, really put the emphasis there and, you know, just keep on growing on that 10 and keep on growing on everything. And if you kind of buy into the process of it all, you know, you'll look back 3 years, 5 years, 8 years later, 10 years later, and, you know, you'll really be how grateful and lucky you are of, like, how much the craft is really giving back to you. But ultimately, you got to kind of give into the craft first.
Yeah, find an environment that's going to allow you to succeed, and if things aren't going the right way, it might be time to take a look in the mirror and, like I said, buckle in.
Drive her
Ride.
slow, take care of the shop will take care of you.
Yeah.
Love it.
Period.
All right, guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of the City Barbers podcast. We'll see you again.
Peace.
Yeah.